Welcome everyone to the game between the World Cup winner Javokhir Sindarov and the World Champion Domaraju Gukesh at the first round of the Tata Steel Chess Masters 2026 in Wijk Aan Zee, Netherlands. On the left of your screen is Javokhir Sindarov. He is perhaps one of the most informed players in the world of chess right now, playing some phenomenal chess. Meanwhile, Gukesh, for him, the world champion, the year 2025 didn't go as he would have loved it to be, but now is a fresh year, a fresh tournament, Gukesh's first game of the year, and so it is for Javokhir as well. They both will be looking to actually win this Tata Steel tournament, and we'll see if that comes out to be true. The first round momentum is very important. You can see how Gukesh calmly is adjusting all his pieces. A handshake here, and off we go. Sindarov thinking about his first move, and this, dear friends, is the ambit recap of the day. Javokhir opens the game with pawn to d4, and Gukesh now goes knight out to f6. We have pawn to c4 played, and pawn to e6. What makes this clash very exciting is the fact that both the players are extremely uncompromising and they love to fight it out against each other. Knight to f3, d5. And I would have definitely given Gukesh an edge in this battle a few months ago. But the way in which Sindarov has played recently, I feel like now there's very little to choose between these two players. And this could very well be the World Championship match in a year from now if Sindarov wins the candidates. So Queen goes to c2, slightly less common than something like Bishop g5 or Bishop f4. And Gukesh quickly plays his Bishop to b4. Ragozin has been Gukesh's childhood love. He loves to play this opening. Pawn takes pawn taken here by Sindarov. And now Gukesh takes back with the pawn. And Javokhir pins the knight with bishop to g5. Gukesh goes h6, asking a question to the bishop. And if you go bishop h4, you have to be ready for sharp lines with g5. And so Javokhir takes here. Of course, Gukesh is not going to take back with the knight, as there is queen a4 check and you drop the bishop. He first takes on c3. Bishop takes knight. Taking with the queen makes a lot of sense. And now just simply knight takes f6. Yes, he takes here. And actually it was also possible, to take, you can't take with the queen because their c7 was hanging. e3 played here by Javokhir, and Gukesh goes knight to e4, attacking the queen. Queen goes to a3, stopping the castling from happening. And now Gukesh can go maybe something like queen e7, but he goes knight d6. He wants to keep some pieces on the board, fighting chess, and castle it out so that this diagonal is blocked, and now you can castle here. Bishop goes out to d3. Black castles. White castles here. And now bishop to f5 is a very logical move. He first goes pawn to c6, but Gukesh would love to play bishop f5 and trade off these two bishops. Javokhir goes in with knight to e5. And if you just look at only the pawn structure, you will see that this is the very famous Carlsbad structure here that white and black have. And in such structures, both sides have their plans. White usually tries to play b4, b5. Black sometimes tries to play on the king side with his pawns. But one thing that is working out in the favor of black is the knight on d6. The knight on d6 is very well positioned, and it can really sit well there. a4 played here by Sindarov. He tries to stop Gukesh's pawns, but in doing so, his idea of minority attack has lost steam. So Gukesh goes queen e7. He stops the pawn from advancing to b4. And rook a b1. Now pushing b4 is difficult. The knight drops back. Pushing b4 is on the agenda. The knight drops back. b4 is on the board. A very double-edged move because the rook puts pressure on the a file and the white rook will put pressure on the b file. So it really sharpens up the game. Pawn takes pawn. And once again, such position, if both the players are happy with the draw, they would anyway be okay. But actually, I think both players here want to fight for the full point, which is what will make this clash so exciting. Knight goes back to d3. Sindarov is aiming for the c5 square to put pressure on b7. Gukesh can bring his rook now to a8. He first brings his queen to c7. He's keeping an eye on these squares. Rook c1 played. And now rook to a8. The pressure on the a4 pawn mounts. But Sindarov goes knight c5. He's like, you can win this pawn later, but you'll always suffer with your b pawn. And if you play b6, that's not possible right now. So knight c4, now threatening b6. And Sindarov comes back, knight d3. So taking on a4 is met with queen b7. b6 is not very good idea. He plays h5. Actually, b6 was also possible with the ideas of c5 later. But h5 and Javokhir going after his h pawn. He maybe wants to play h3. We are on move 24 right now. 25 moves done. 15 more moves to make in 27 minutes for Sindarov. h3 played. And now g6 by black. He goes with his rook to e1 with the idea of trying to expand. h4 played, fixing this structure. And rook goes to c1. We have the king coming up to g7. Slowly and steadily, Gukesh would like to expand on the king side. The rook goes to e1. And king comes back to g8. And Sindarov is like, okay, I'm happy with the draw here because I don't see how we are going to make progress. But Gukesh wants to fight. He never takes short draws, not even in the World Championship match. Knight to e5. And the knight drops back to d6. He goes rook a1, defending the pawn here. Knight jumps to e4. We have rook a2 and now queen d6 offering a queen trade. But Sindarov, he played this move, queen b6, then he brought it back and now plays it. Queen to b6. Queen goes to e7. You can see that every time Gukesh gets his knight to d6 to defend this pawn, the a4 pawn comes under pressure. And now rook a5 played. This time there's no piece to put pressure on b7. So he comes back knight d3. And now b5 played very quickly. Well, if you were to take rook c6, then ba4 is a strong move. So he goes rook a1. Gukesh triples down on the c file. The game is getting super exciting now. Queen to c2. And now the c6 pawn is under pressure. He takes on a4. Queen c6 is a must move. With a very interesting position because a pawn could be strength there. But he goes knight b4. It's a mistake. And why is it a mistake? Because of queen b7. You have to go queen b7. If you go queen b6, then knight c6. And now if I move my rook here, there's knight e7 check and you lose the pawn. So if you go queen b7 and I take, and now rook a6, there's no knight e7 check. And he finds it. Queen b7. Great move played here by Gukesh. Rook takes a4 played here. I mean, taking on c6 was maybe slightly better, but rook a6 black was better. And now rook a4 and Gukesh is ready to sack his queen. Queen takes b4. Amazing move by Gukesh. And you can see Sindarov is a bit stunned there. Rook takes a1 check. And now the 40 moves have been done. So both players get 30 extra minutes on the clock. And the point to note here is that Gukesh is actually checkmating the white king because of the pawn and the knight and the rooks. If you go rook b1, I have rook a2, queen d3, knight d2, takes on a1, takes on a1, and this is mate. Look at the pretty mate here. It's game over. But king h2 played. He doesn't fall for rook b1. And now Gukesh thinks for a bit. Sindarov has 20 minutes on the clock. And Gukesh can go rook f1, which is a strong move, but he goes king g7, which is also an amazing move because it takes away the ideas of check on the back rank. Also, whenever the queen enters and tries to give a check, it's no longer possible to give checks there. Rook to b7 played by Javokhir. And now pressure on the f7 pawn. The only move to continue to play for a win is rook f1. And I think it's an obvious move. But like, let's say f3, there's knight g3 and a mate. So not so simple here. He plays rook f1. Let's go. But Gukesh took a huge amount of time. He took 15 minutes for this move. And maybe he should have played it faster there. Queen takes c6 taken. And rook swings in. There's a mate threatened here, which is unstoppable. You have to give up your rook now and hope that there is a perpetual. And Gukesh asks the kids there to be a little quiet and then asks the arbiter that, please, can you ask everyone to be quiet because there's some noise that's happening there. The fans are maybe a bit too close. Queen d5 check. King goes to g7. And now queen takes e4 is met with rook h1 mate. So you have to keep giving checks. Check here. If you go king here, there's also queen check. It comes back knight to f6. Check again. King h6. Materially, white is doing brilliantly. There's no problem. He has 3 pawns for a piece there and maybe he'll win one more. But what the big problem is that his king is almost checkmated. Goes queen f7. Gukesh tries to repeat so that he gains time on the clock. Check. And now if you want to make progress, you have to go king h5 so as to meet queen c5 check with g5. So queen h8, king g5, and now f4. He gives the check, king f5 played, and queen c8 check. The only move here. Oh, he goes queen h4, and that's a big mistake because now it's almost game over. Check. King g3, check. King f3, check. King e2, another check here. It's a powerful move. If queen f2, knight f2, king f2, that's a lost endgame. So he goes king d3. And now just rook g2 is game over. There are no checks and it's all under control. But he first gives rook d2 check, king c4. And now rook c1 check. That's also a nice move. If king d5, you have rook c5 checkmate. It's a very nice mate. So he goes king b3. And he goes rook c3 check. Well, if only Gukesh could finish off this game with checks. It was all done. But it's not so simple. The final check is missing on the a file after king a4. If king a5, rook a3 is mate. But king a4. And now there's no check here. So he goes rook a2. He tries to gain some time with repetition here, which is a good idea. But now in 2 minutes, Gukesh has to figure out what's the best way. The best move is rook c7, but he takes on e3. He gives Javokhir a chance. Queen g4, king goes back to f6, another check. Maybe you want to repeat once more. But I think Gukesh is ready to run. King e6. The king jumps to e6. Queen d8. And now check. Well, a very good idea here was knight d6. I'm just winning because check, I just run with my king here. But he goes rook a2, king b4, rook b2, king a4, and now knight d6. Go for it, Gukesh. But he takes the pawn on g2. And this is making the win complicated. It's no longer so simple. Queen g8 check. King f5. Queen f8 check. And now very important to go king e6. But he goes knight f6. And that's a mistake because now queen c5 check. And you can see how quickly Sindarov made this move. He knows that he can actually save this now. If king e4, there is queen a5 check and you drop this knight. So you have to play like king takes f4. But then after king takes f4, there is queen d6 check. So he takes the pawn, check. Knight is hanging. Either go king f5 or king g5. Goes king f5. And now check again. If king e6, there's queen c6 check. You drop the rook. Check again. And all of a sudden, the position is drawn. It's a perpetual. King g5, but nothing changes. Oh, he goes h4. Yeah, because queen c5, there was king h4. h4, king f5, and again the check. Wow, king f4. Check again. You can't play anything because the knight is hanging. That would be really difficult if you lose the knight. And look at Gukesh there. He can't believe that he's botched this up. The arbiter comes in with new score sheets. But the position is already drawn now. And Gukesh now coming to grips with the reality. He plays king f5, queen c5 check, and they agree to a draw. Look at Sindarov there. Look at Gukesh. Sindarov, see, he's just dodged a bullet there. While Gukesh can't believe that he could not win this game. 78 moves, but immensely amazing play by Gukesh there and fantastic defense by Javokhir Sindarov. And in the end, Gukesh's winning attempts were not enough. That one final move that he went wrong was all that Javokhir needed to hold the draw. Gukesh was so close to that win, and truly this encounter lived up to its expectations of pitting two of the biggest fighters in the world of chess right now.